I built my koi pond the same year my marriage began to crack. It was never meant to be decoration. It was meant to be quiet, a place where I could watch color move slowly through water and remember how to breathe when my home felt too loud. Every stone was set by my hands, every plant chosen after weeks of reading, every filter cleaned before sunrise so no one would see how much it mattered to me. My sister-in-law never understood that kind of care. She breezed through life with a careless smile and a way of touching things that were not hers, as if the world existed only for her comfort. She visited often after my brother and I stopped speaking, arriving with bags of groceries she never unpacked and opinions she never kept to herself. She treated my house like a waiting room, never sitting long, always moving, always judging. I tried to ignore how her eyes lingered on the pond, how she wrinkled her nose at the smell of water and leaves, how she once said it was a waste of space in a yard meant for children. I told myself people were allowed to think differently, that peace meant letting small things go. The morning I found the pond ruined, the air felt heavier than it should have. The water was cloudy, the surface broken by dead leaves that did not belong there. My filter lay on the grass, unplugged, its cord soaked and twisted like something had struggled before giving up. The fish that had once glided like living jewels were nowhere to be seen, their shadows gone. The pond suddenly empty in a way that made my chest ache. I knelt in the mud and felt something tear open inside me, a realization that this was not neglect or accident, but choice. I did not cry. I did not scream. I cleaned my hands in the sink and watched the brown water swirl down the drain. My phone buzzed with a cheerful message from her about dropping by later, as if nothing had happened, as if the small sanctuary I built was not lying in pieces outside. In that quiet kitchen, with the sound of running water fading into silence, I understood that silence had been my mistake all along, and that this time I would not let it protect anyone but myself. I spent the rest of the day pretending to restore what could not be restored. I scooped out debris with a net that felt too light without the gentle resistance of fish beneath it. I tested the water again and again, even though I already knew there was no fixing a pond that had been deliberately poisoned with soap and fertilizer, no bringing back lives that had been tossed out like trash. While my hands worked, my mind replayed every moment I had ever brushed off, every comment about the smell, the bugs, the way she said real homes did not have ponds. It was suddenly clear that this had not been impulsive. It had been rehearsed in her head long before it happened. She arrived that evening in a cloud of perfume and loud energy, stepping over the empty filter as if it were nothing more than a garden tool. She looked at the murky water and laughed it off with a shrug of her shoulders, already moving inside as though the damage behind her was invisible. I stayed quiet, not out of fear, but out of focus. I watched how she avoided the back window, how she kept her phone in her hand as if waiting for a distraction. People who do not feel guilty never look that busy. Later, after she left, I went through my home the way someone surveys a crime scene. The cabinet under the sink was open even though I never left it that way. A half-empty bottle of algae cleaner sat on the counter, its cap crusted with white residue that did not belong there. In the trash, beneath coffee grounds and paper towels, I found the torn wrapper from a bag of lawn fertilizer I had never bought. My hands shook as I pieced it together, not because I doubted what had happened, but because I finally had proof that could not be softened into misunderstanding. I did not confront her. I did not tell my brother. I told no one at all. Instead, I started writing everything down, the dates she visited, the things that went missing, the comments she made that sounded harmless, until they were stacked together. I pulled old photos from my phone and found the one she had posted months earlier, smiling beside my pond with a caption about clearing out useless junk. I zoomed in and noticed the same bottle of cleaner in the background, already in her hand back then, already a plan forming behind her grin. Days passed, and the pond stayed empty, a dark mirror in the yard that reflected my own silence back at me. She texted about bringing her children over to play outside, about how the yard would look so much better without all that water taking up space. I replied with polite words that cost me nothing, because I was done paying with my peace. Every message she sent became another thread in the net I was quietly weaving. The turning point came when I visited the small aquatic shop where I had bought my koi. The owner recognized me immediately and asked how the fish were doing. I told him the truth, without drama, and his face hardened in a way that made me realize this was not just my loss. He explained how easily certain chemicals kill koi, how quickly the water turns lethal when someone pours the wrong thing into it. He offered to test a sample from my pond, and when the results came back, they confirmed what my heart already knew. This was not carelessness. This was destruction with intent. Walking home with that paper in my bag, I felt lighter than I had since the morning I found the pond ruined. Grief was still there, heavy and real, but it was now sharpened into something useful. I had spent years swallowing disrespect in the name of family harmony, letting small cruelties slide until they grew bold enough to wipe out something I loved. As I stood in my empty yard that night, staring into water that no longer held life, I finally admitted that the silence I called peace had only taught her that there would never be consequences. By the time her next visit rolled around, I was no longer just mourning what I had lost. I was ready to make sure she understood exactly what it cost to treat another person's world as disposable. The day I acted, I did not raise my voice or call for witnesses. I simply handed my brother a folder and asked him to look through it when he had time. Inside were the test results, the photos, the notes I had kept in neat, steady handwriting that told the story better than anger ever could. I watched his face change later from confusion to disbelief to something like grief, the slow realization that the person he trusted had chosen to destroy something fragile because it inconvenienced her. The fallout was not loud, but it was deep. She stopped coming over. My brother stopped defending her. The yard felt different without her presence, as if the air itself had decided to rest. I drained the poisoned water and rebuilt the pond stone by stone, not as an act of forgiveness, but as a declaration that what was taken from me would not define me. When I released the new koi weeks later, I did it with care that felt almost ceremonial, a promise to myself that I would no longer protect the people who hurt me at the expense of the things that kept me whole. Now, when I sit beside the pond and watch the fish glide through clear water, I do not think about revenge. I think about boundaries, about the quiet power of truth when it is finally allowed to stand in the open. My sister-in-law once believed my silence meant she could do whatever she wanted. What she learned instead was that silence is not weakness, and that even the calmest water can carry consequences beneath its surface.